Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to Mind Heist. Welcome to Mind Heist.
Oh God!
Was that too loud?
Apologise for the listeners
The
who have got those
cheesiness.
headphones in, and they're just on their commute or wherever it is, and they've just been subjected to that.
You know, I was playing with adding sound effects, yeah.
Yeah.
So look, excuse me for the one that I've just did this as a trial, okay? It was this.
Alik.
That was from Mohammed Hajar.
Alik.
Oh, I came across something like that on our software when I was looking at it. There's
Nah.
something called, I don't know if that's relevant or not, but I saw something titled Mohammed Hijab memes. I didn't click on it though.
Oh yeah,
but
yeah.
it
This
was
is where
there.
I got it from. Yeah. Okay, bro. So I got a few topics. Yeah. The first was just kind of I don't want to say recapping, but like digging a bit into the last episode we recorded. And by the way, I think everyone should check that out. Like it was a really good one. I
Yeah.
feel like it was slept on. I don't know. Maybe now the clips have convinced people to go and check out the full episode. I don't know, but I found it really good and actually beneficial, and and you'll probably learn something interesting as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I think I must be honest. I didn't know who Umer Suleman was beforehand. Obviously, I'd heard of Wahed. But I think I think it's something to say about podcasts in general. The ones that are well known people will always get the plays and the listens and stuff. But no, take our word for it. It was actually really really beneficial, especially you may have spoken to him before, but I definitely hadn't had any contact with him, so it was really refreshing to kind of hear that. And you don't expect it, when you said you had a guest from Wahed, I was like, okay, sweet. I was expecting a little bit of a sales pitch, but I didn't get any of that. It was more about money, bro. It's more about the finances of it all. It's more about how to halalify. I hate that word, but I used it. Oh well. It's more about the barakah aspect and some of the things I didn't really think about. But yeah, there are some clips on Instagram that we've been putting up, and some of them got thousands of plays. So the message is getting out there, alhamdulillah, and that's what's useful.
Yeah, I think funnily enough, the main thing I got out of it for me was the fact that if people listen to the episode, they would have heard all the things he's working on, right? All the things he's involved in, organizations, and he's still doing podcast episodes, like random podcasts as well. Like, okay, I added him on Facebook, who knows how long ago, like 6 months ago, let's say. I was in touch with him about another issue, and now I invited him on, and he was very open, and he didn't say, okay, what are your downloads, what are you this, what that,
Oh, right, yeah.
He literally just came on for the sake of Allah to actually get that financial education to people, basically. He didn't come on as like Wahed Invest PR kind of thing. He came on literally for the sake of Allah to educate Muslims on what he knows of financial kind of literacy.
Yeah.
And he's a busy guy, but he still does those things. And even on the podcast, if people notice, he said, I was at a masjid giving a talk, right? So he's a very busy guy, and he's still doing these things. And he said the reason he does it is because, when you do these things for the sake of Allah, Allah actually gives you more in terms of time, in terms of whatever it is, income,
true.
barakah,
And
So
he
that was
mentioned,
actually
didn't
maybe
he?
one of the main things I took from it.
But he mentioned as well he had five kids as well.
Yeah,
They're
mashallah,
old
yeah.
now, but it's the juggling act is incredible. And sometimes you meet people like that, subhanallah, that are absolutely non-stop. I have an uncle, and he'd never listened to his podcast, but I just say that he's literally just like that, non-stop, like always trying to do things for people, always trying to do khair. So sometimes you wonder, like, how do they manage it? But yes, subhanallah, Allah really does put barakah in people's time for that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And he said that one of the clips that we came out with was from him, where he said about giving yourself a higher purpose, working towards something that is greater than yourself, and then everything else will fall into place. And that really did make me think, because what are we but tools for khair? If you just And I see it, and I don't like comparing myself with other people, but I do see the differences where some people are, I'm not trying to say I'm better than them, but definitely their focus is way more nefsi than I'd like to think I am, although I probably do have my weaknesses. But like sometimes you're like, wow, there's so many things that are falling by the wayside. And you can observe that in other people where you can just see their responsibilities are falling apart because there is that focus on the self way more than you'd think they should. But may Allah guide us, bro. We all have our weaknesses, no doubt.
Ameen, Rob. So, are you jumping on Wahid or not?
I want to. I have not done in the past. The reason I didn't is because the reason I stopped was because I wanted to learn myself. You know, I always have that thing of like, I had time. So I was like, okay, I might as well learn what this is all about myself. But now that I've kind of, I'm not saying I'm you know,
the man.
Yeah, I'm definitely not. But I think it's smart too. I think why not? And I think as time goes, yeah, I will. I think what happened is I had an ISA somewhere else, and it kind of messed things up. So I had to some sort of intricate thing. But no, inshallah, we'll see. Inshallah, I think I'd like to when things are a bit more settled. What about? Well, you said you had issues, but I don't know.
Yeah, I was really looking for either an ETF or index fund. Okay, because I just, you know, I've been reading people like Ramit Sethi, for example. He's like a personal finance, how do you call it? Public figure, Guru, you could say. Yeah. I've been reading his stuff for probably 7 years, 8 years, 9 years, something like that, right? And so reading these kind of people, you pick up, okay, the main advice for people financially, okay? One of them is always take a percentage of your income and put it into an index fund, which is basically a group of hundreds, usually stocks in hundreds of companies, and it just gets spread out amongst all of those. And if you just do that, what's it called, consistently, every single month, you just kind of forget about it, yeah? You're getting paid 3K a month, you're putting £250 a month there, £200, forget about it. Basically, it compounds, right? There's no interest involved, but there's compounding. And by the time you're, you know, retirement age, whatever it is, you've got a very nice chunk of money because it's just been building up over time. And of course, the big thing is the discipline that we talked about in the episode, which is like, don't pull money out of it. Just keep putting in, yeah? The economy's up, put it in. Economy's down, put it in, right? People that do that, they just simply, you know, do well. Like, it's very, very proven, very solid, kind of low risk thing, yeah? And so that's what I've been looking for it, right? Because I wasn't too sure about Wahid, I went for the route of picking stocks myself.
Yep.
You know, I knew that was like less likely to do well. And I would say it's not done that well for me.
Just to stop you there, though, don't you think it's been a bit too early to say it's not done that well?
Well,
you know,
okay, I say not done. It's not done well based on the assumption that I would make 10% in a year, or let's say at least 7%. Right.
Okay.
In a down year, I would expect, I think 7%. Let's say maybe let's even 5%. Yeah. In a down year, in an up year like the last year has been, I would actually expect at least 10%. Right. But I know the average, I think, is around the 10% mark over a 10-year period. The average gain, if you like, per year is 10%. So I've not done that, which shows me, that kind of proof to me that, you shouldn't be doing this stuff yourself if you're really looking for those kind of consistent returns. So that's why I say it kind of didn't work for me. So I've been looking for that. I didn't use Wahid for a few reasons, whatever. And I've gone down that route, and it's not really, I don't see it working. Ultimately, bro, like the end goal is to have something like an index fund, an ETF. That's just what I want. I want to just send my money in there and forget about it. Unlike you, I wasn't that interested in learning the craft.
Right,
you know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. So although it's always interesting as a hobby, but maybe I prefer to put time elsewhere, if you like. So having him on, it was good because, like you said, the way he talks, it makes you feel like, okay, this guy's serious about keeping it halal, right?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
That's what I felt, and sometimes, yes, you do go based on the feeling of the person. And it's not, with all respect to him, he's not up there with the most amazing speakers that are going to blow your mind. Even though they're wrong, they're like able to convince you. It's just sounded genuine. That's what I'm trying to say, basically. The way he speaks, very genuine. So that kind of was good to know. Also, the fact that, of course, Wahid is following the IOFI principles, which have their own scholars who like create the standards. On top of that, I know Umer Suleman, he's linked to people like Sheikh Haytham, someone that I tend to follow a lot in their rulings and stuff. I don't know if Sheikh Haytham himself would co-sign like Wahid or not, I don't know. But the fact that he's linked to him, you know, that's a good sign to me. So these things are good. However, bro, after I put the episode out, I had a good conversation with Kaya. Yeah, because Kaya's been on the podcast like 2-3 times.
Kaya, yes.
Yeah. And Kaya was like, I'm listening to this podcast and I'm less convinced than before, not more convinced. Yeah. And his reason was, he was saying that, I don't think he would mind me saying this. His reason was, he's like, he didn't like how confident Umer Suleman was in talking about how it's all halal. Yeah.
Okay.
Because there is the element of companies who have 5% of their revenue from haram means. Yeah.
Yep.
So to say that it's fully halal, fully legit, he's like, he didn't like that. Okay. So you go ahead.
I was going to say, I don't think I'll have to listen to the episode. I don't think he ever said it was fully halal in that sense, because we did bring up the whole, I think we mentioned the 5% thing. But he referred to the scholars with regard to that, especially the what was it called? The
IOFI, AAOFI, yeah.
Yeah, so those scholars who've obviously, there's hundreds of scholars involved in that, maybe even more. And they did eventually settle on this 5%.
Yeah.
Now, that 5% doesn't mean that, you know, it's 5% haram and you go and do whatever you want with it. It actually means that needs to be purified once you sort of cash out or whatever it is. So you cash out, you check that company's, and this is where the element of, this is a question I wanted to ask and I never got to be honest. I forgot to ask, but it was with Wahid, take care of that purification process, or how do you manage the purification process? Because when you're doing it on your own and you know what you've invested in, let's say you're using Zoya, for example, I can cross-reference and say, okay, let's say today I sold Tesla, hypothetically, right? Well, I can go and look at Tesla's finances through Zoya, for example, and see how much of that percentage is haram, for example. Let's say less than 5%, or let's say 3%. I know that 3% of my profit has to go, or 3% of what I've got cash back has to go.
Yeah.
With Wahid, I didn't know if they'd take care of that already, because it'd be interesting if they did.
I think what he said was that they notify you how much exactly you have to give away.
Oh, that's great then. That's great if that's the case, because I did think maybe it's they do it for you, only because I think when I did have an account with them, there was a very long, not very long, but like it was quite a long, it felt like quite a long delay to get my withdrawal. So I thought, oh, maybe they're taking care of some things on that end. But if they notify you how much, that's even better. I mean, look, ultimately, this isn't a problem, I don't think, with Wahid. I think this is a problem that a Muslim investor has to come to terms with if they want to invest in the stock market. Because straight away, no matter where you go, every single company that you look at, I don't know anything I've ever looked at, to the best of my knowledge, that is like 100%. And I think he even mentioned that in the podcast. Yeah. And I don't think anything you can touch in this day and age is 100%. You know, even look at this podcast, right? We don't make money out of it, but look at the software you're using. Well, we don't know who owns that. Who are we funding by using that, right? These mics, who are we funding by using that? Lots of stuff, right? Lots of things, you know. Even this flat I live in, right? It's all hunky dory, bro. But I'm sure somewhere in that contract there was like an insurance thing or some sort of something I've had to sign, because what choice do you have? So it's about how far you want to go. I fully appreciate and I understand Kai's perspective on that. And there's a lot of brothers that will stay away from the stock market for that very reason. Yes. You know, and I absolutely do not blame them in the slightest. Yes. Some people will say, you know, funnily enough, using the lessons that we got from that podcast, say, you know, I don't need to invest money like that. I can just save money. Why do I need my money to grow? I'll just make it grow by working hard. Yeah. And honestly, you know, there is truth to it. I mean, if you have the zuhud, and you can really detach yourself from the dunya, you can live off very little. You know, you can live very hand to mouth. You could have a job where you literally, you know, you get a few clothes every few years because you get something that lasts. SubhanAllah, I don't really need to shop. If I'm not too keen on fashion or whatever, my clothes will last me until they're torn, right? And then I could just buy food.
Bro, and even after they're torn, that's just fashionable now.
Well, this is it, bro. This is it. But honestly, and it does make you think. You think, and I think we all need a bit of self-reflection in that because, Omar said it quite well. He said about, what is your end goal? Is your end goal the wealth, or what the wealth is going to do for you, or enable you to do? And if it's at the end of the day, if there's no khair in what the goal is, then what's the point? We all want good for our family. We all want khair for our family, but like, can you really like tangibly, manifest that? And can you think about what that really means? I want my family to have nice things. Well, no, give me something. If it was something like, I'll give you an example. Like, I had a thought cross my mind the other day about like Islamic schools, right? Or maybe in London or whatever. And I thought there's probably some Islamic schools out there that are private, right? How would I fund that? How would I pay for that?
Yeah,
that's a tangible goal, okay? But if it's just like wealth for the sake of wealth, and I don't want to keep going on, but me and my wife did have a thought experiment the other day. I remember we sat down and we were just, having a chat. And I remember asking, I was like, listen, let's have a little bit of an experiment. Let's just imagine that all of a sudden my bank account just pinged and I just had an unthinkable amount of money in there, like that it just wouldn't expire. What would I do with it, right? And I'm not here to praise myself or big myself. I will big ourselves up. But apart from like pay off some debts and possibly purchase a house, I don't know. It wasn't the first thing that came to mind. I couldn't think of anything other than what I could do for other people. In sense like, I'd love to, help my mum out with that thing, or help my dad out, or help. But when it came to like, yeah, of course. Actually, that was the main thing. That was the number one thing. I said after Hajj and maybe like, go to a couple of places in the world. Even though I'm not that keen, like it's like a be all end all for me. It was kind of like that, and it did make me think like maybe partly, having kids does separate you from the dunya a little bit in one aspect. But I don't know. I guess there is a bit of a detachment. I know I say that, and I'm sure I could be proven wrong by my family, my friends, or whatever. But in that thought experiment, I really struggled. And I don't know. Do you want to do it? Let me think about you, bro. If you just suddenly pinged, and I think everyone should do it. Everyone should do it. If your bank account just pinged, because there's definitely some people, Akhi, you would ask them that question, Muslim or not, and they would just be like, okay, I want this Lamborghini, I want this super whatever scooter, this jet ski, this yacht, this, and I think I'm very aware of. I've just become way more aware of how all these things I thought were like material freedoms are actually just other reasons to be upset and depressed and sad. And I struggle with some things we've got in our life now. I don't want more things to be upset over. But you tell me, bro.
What would I do? Yeah.
I know you, bro. You're a thinking man, bro.
No, I know quite clearly what I would do actually.
Go on, if you can.
But what kind of money are we talking about? Like tens of millions, or less than that?
I'm literally saying like you can't even imagine putting a dent in it.
Okay, okay, cool. So what I would do is
apart from ending world hunger, because we'd all love to do that. But like seriously,
something like specific, so
specific things.
What I would do is I would buy the house I live in now. Yeah. I would. I've actually. You caught me in a good time because I've been looking at property in Turkey. Okay, so I would buy. Definitely, I would buy some land in Turkey. Right. I would probably put a cabin. I might put a few cabins on it actually, and I would make it like a cabin kind of nature escape kind of place. Now, one of those I might just reserve for myself. The others I would rent out. And what I was thinking of doing actually is I would put them on Airbnb and all of that, right? But I would actually might make 1, 2, depends how many I've got, but I'll put 1 or 2 or whatever of them as waqf, right? Okay. So all the income from there is going to charity or whatever.
So can I pause you there, if you don't mind?
Yeah, go on.
So why would you think of renting a property if you already had enough money? Like you can't even make a dent in the money at the moment. Because
having money is not like having wealth in my mind. Like money can very much go away, whether currency loses valuation, whether inflation, whether bank account, this and that. But if I can take that $1 billion and turn it into so many different places that I've put it, it becomes more secure and it's more diversified, like Omar was saying. And also, it's like, for me, like, come on, buying land, putting cabins and this and that on it, that's a bit of a hobby in and of itself as well, right? So it's like it's a place to go. It's a place, people want to visit, this and that. But so far what I said is not really, I wouldn't say it's charitable per se. I mean, the waqf thing, I was already kind of thinking about it. Like, for example, bro, you buy a house for you, like that's your house either to live in, or you rent it out, but it's there for your security if you ever needed to live in it. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I feel like you're saving up now maybe for house number 2. Okay.
Right.
That's a big decision, right? What do you do with house number 2? Because obviously most people, they say, okay, house number 2 is another income stream. House number 3 is another income stream. At what point do you say, this house is for waqf? This house, every penny of rent that comes from it is going to charity.
Right.
I feel like that kind of decision is so difficult to make. Like, what, a house number 100, you're going to do that? Like, you know what I mean?
At what point? Yeah.
But at the same time, it's very powerful. And I imagine it'd be very difficult to do, to say, look, house number 2, that's for waqf. Like, that's difficult, isn't it?
That's the psychology, bro. The psychology of, the more you own, the less you want to lose.
Yes.
And it's actually the people that have the least are the ones that are more charitable, and it's a crazy sort of psychological trap to get yourself.
Yeah, I think that's a good kind of mental exercise, is to think about, what do I need to live? Yeah, to know that number. Yeah. I approximately know that number. So if I'm earning X amount, X times that, 2 times that, 3 times that, the minimum I need to live. If I'm earning that much more than it, come on, like, it's a bit of a reality check in terms of how much more generous I should be, especially if I'm trusting on Allah to provide for me, even without, savings or whatever.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because Omar mentioned this in that episode, and I'd always thought about it as a rationalizer, but of how, like, out of Allah's mercy that he doesn't make somebody wealthy or rich because you can't handle it. And I remember always like thinking that to myself. I thought, you know what, I am in the position I am because Allah knows this is what I can handle, and maybe I couldn't handle. And there's been times actually where, I remember, like, uni was a long time ago, and I'd only just started practicing, so I had a lot to learn. But I had way more money than I needed while I was at uni. And what did I do with it, bro? There's not a penny left of it. I just spent it on clothes and nonsense, right? And it's just like, I don't want to be on a slippery slope and attain something that's absolutely going to ruin me, especially now when your actions are not solely affecting you and yourself. They're affecting your family and your responsibilities. I'd hate to become a worse dad or a worse husband because of wealth and because of, the distractions that come along with that. And actually, think about it, bro. The moment the moment you've got extra zeros in your bank account, all sorts of people are going to want to be your friends, right? And I'm not dissing the friends I've got now in the slightest, but there's going to be way more people that are going to start hitting you up and start offering things. And
they'd never know, bro.
Yeah, well, this is it. I always
I would try and keep it secret.
Yeah, that's another thing. I fully, fully would love that. That would be the dream, to do that and just be able to help people in silence and help people. It's difficult to help your family without them knowing, but I don't think they need to know specifics. But bro, you see it sometimes, and I put it on YouTube, actually, and it is really motivating. Those YouTube videos of, like, usually it's really rich YouTubers that don't need to be that rich, but like they're buying their dad a house or paying off their mum's mortgage or whatever it is, and it is really beautiful to see stuff like that. And what did I put on recently? Remember that Qalbi Yatma'in from Ramadan? I put that on again recently, and I was like, wow, this is incredible. Like, this is what it's all about, and this is what I would love to dedicate my life doing. Like, if I had wealth in that amount, like, I just feel like, well, that's my purpose now. My purpose isn't to spend this and enjoy this, because at the end of the day, it's everything I'm going to be questioned about. But it's easy to say that from this side of the fence, isn't it? The moment you're on that side of the fence, it's easy to lose. And anyone could look at us right now, bro. Not to point fingers at yourself, bro, but with what's going on in Turkey in terms of the lira and stuff, I'm sure you're going to have Turkish people that are looking at you thinking, oh, he's got it good right now, because you're living in a different kind of bubble within Turkey, right? So got to count our blessings, no doubt.
Yeah, definitely. I would also buy a private jet because travel and mobility, it's really useful, man. It's really useful.
Okay. Think of the carbon footprint, bro.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. I haven't thought this through fully, but yeah, I mean, cool, also private jet can be a bit of a headache in terms of you got to keep it staffed, maintained. Sounds like a bit of a headache.
Well, this is it. Like, oh god, where was you've reminded me of a video in my head, and now I don't remember where I'd watched it. God, it was some sort of, maybe it was a podcast or something. Maybe we spoke about it, where they were doing a thought experiment on like what the difference between 1 million and 1 billion was. Where was that?
Yeah.
Where was that? I don't
know. That was the episode we talked about, like Jeff Bezos and these kind of people, and how much money they've got compared to something.
I can't remember what podcast. I think I heard it on a podcast. But yeah, it was talking about the maintenance of like all these things. Like the more you purchase, the more you have to maintain.
Yeah.
You know, I always, subhanAllah, every woman, whether it's my mum or my wife or anyone, will always fantasize about a big house, right? And, you know, driveway and all this stuff. And we'll drive past some nice houses. And maybe it's the man in me, but I always think of like, God, maintaining that is going to be an absolute headache. Like my alhamdulillah, my mother-in-law, she's got quite a large house in London. But when we're there, bro, it's so tiring. Like 3 floors, whatever you want to call it. And it's like, she's on the top, all the way at the top, and it's like having the kids there, they're just running around everywhere, and it's like, how do you tidy this and tidy that and tidy all these floors? It's like, wow, then you're going to need a cleaner, and then you're going to need to pay the cleaner. I mean, that's all this sort of stuff, man.
That's true.
You know,
there's one guy that he's kind of a business public figure, been following for a while. He obviously made a lot of money. He bought a very big house. He bought the Lamborghini. He bought all this stuff, yeah. Then he just over time came to the conclusion that it's a load of rubbish. Like, it really distracts him from what he loves. He actually loves building businesses, working on his business and stuff. Right. Yeah. So he made the brave choice of actually just getting rid of all of it. He got rid of all of it. And then he moved to an apartment. And it's funny, he's got this apartment with nothing in it. He's got a mattress to sleep on. He's got a desk to work on. And that's the only things in the thing. Yeah. It's really interesting. And then he's done many kind of videos talking about how it was just a headache, you know, maintenance for all this stuff. It's actually becomes a risk on you, like a liability. Yeah, that's the word. Liability. So, yeah.
It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, as a practicing Muslim, you know, with ideally a social circle that is, you know, because social circles can change with wealth, can't they? And you'd like to think that you would maintain the same connections that you always have. But what the key point I'm trying to get at is, like, material things often are things that we attain because we want to kind of show off that thing. Like, you know, why would you need a Lamborghini, or why would you need, I know everyone talks about Lamborghini like that's the first thing to go to, but there are legitimately people that's what they want. You know, they want a really nice car, and they want a really nice house, they want really nice designer clothes. And it's trying to get at the mental sort of psychology of that, because a great example is designer clothes. You know, if you're going to get it because of the quality, then I'm sure there's plenty of other brands that are like very good quality that aren't really out there, right? But really and truthfully, like, why is Louis Vuitton just covered in Louis Vuitton symbols? It's about that symbol. It's about the statement that you're going to give out.
Might as well write on the, like, get a t-shirt that says, I spent £1,000 on this.
Yeah, and that's what it is.
That's basically what it's saying.
And it's you know, I'm gonna say the SM word, but social media again. You know, if that's what it's all for, to show off, and then you've really got to reassess what your goals are. And I've had a few weird on and off relationships with social media these past month. I wasn't sure if I was going to bring it up, but I don't know if I mentioned it, but like a couple of brothers messaged me actually privately. But I deactivated Instagram for about a week. Somebody messaged me and they're like, "Why did you activate? Is everything all right?" And I kind of, one thing I said was like, we speak about it so much on Mind Heist, and we've been speaking about it for like 5 years, and it's steadily just getting worse and worse. Like, we just refer to it more as a source of problem as we refer to it. And obviously there's been brothers around me that have deactivated whatever, but I just remember, like, it suddenly dawned upon me how unhappy I was scrolling on you know. And I don't want to be caught in that sort of cycle of like unfriending people or unfollowing people or whatever, because I don't want to upset them. So I deactivated, and then I felt really good about deactivating. I felt really great, and then suddenly you start getting all these things about missing out on things. And it wasn't missing out on people's content or people's lives. It was just the opportunities that the internet can give you, right? So at the moment, I've got a bit of a middle ground, which I think I like, which is going back to what social media originally was. And you brought it up, actually. We did a clip, I think, where you mentioned about Facebook originally becoming was something on your computer, and then it became something that you carry with you all the time. And separating it, like I just sat at the computer now and I checked some of the stuff, and I had a couple of messages, a couple of this, a couple of that, replied to that, closed it, and that was done. I didn't have to sit there scrolling. I didn't have to.
So using Instagram on your computer, basically.
Yeah. So Instagram has now added a feature to post on, or at least just normal posts on the PC, which I thought, okay, great. And I feel better about it, and I feel like, okay, this is good. I do feel a bit of hypocrisy because, you know, you're posting and you're engaging with people that are actually part of that problem, or in that cycle, sort of, you know, still that scrolling cycle. But then I try to rationalize that by saying, well, I'm just assuming that everybody's having negative effects by doing this. I know I had negative, you know, reaction to this, but maybe not everybody else does, and maybe everyone's managing their time, you know.
I mean, if everyone was on Instagram for 20 minutes a day, you would still get the likes and the comments. They might be less, but, you know, maybe the less of the negatives, but you'd still, basically I'm saying it's not hypocritical if you wish for them what you have. Like what you have now is using it, but in a more controlled way.
Yeah,
and
there is I think there is definitely outlets that are much more beneficial. You know, I think I feel like YouTube, if you can control it, YouTube's quite good. As long as you don't get sucked into the arguing. Twitter can be good, but at the same time, you get sucked into debates. So it's like, you know, I've managed to train myself a long time ago not to jump onto every single disagreement I have with anybody. You know, we spoke about that as well. We see it and we move on. But yeah, I think Instagram, God, you know, our Mind Heist, that Instagram account, because we use it to obviously share things, but we don't really use it as a, you know, like anything or whatever.
Yeah.
I just tapped on the Explore feed. I didn't realize I was logged into the Mind Heist, so I tapped on the Explore feed, and it was horrendous, bro. So like, if you haven't attacked your algorithm and you know, molded it to suit you, you are just exposed to what they want you to see, which is horrendous. And it's like, wow. They definitely have an agenda. Because I remember when the Explore, whatever you want to call it, thing came out back on those image-based social media apps. It used to be photography. It used to be like cool pictures, animals, and you know, scenery, and you know, that's what it was.
No innocence left now.
Yeah, bro. Oh, no wonder TikTok. I hated TikTok because that's probably why that was. Because there's some people that I speak to, and they're like, "Oh, TikTok's fine. You just get reminders, or you get this and that." I'm like, no, clearly the algorithm is completely innocent. Well, not innocent, completely untouched. And so it's going to show you what. Yeah, it's going to show you what it thinks you're going to want to see, which is not what I want to see.
Yeah.
And that speaks for itself, bro.
Yeah. But yeah, bro, private jet.
You know, I watched the film yesterday. I'm going to mention this film because some people told me to watch it, and I'm a bit disappointed because it wasn't as what I wanted it to be. But it's called Don't Look Up. Have you seen it?
No.
Don't Look Up. Have you heard of it?
No, not heard of it actually.
So the premise, the premise was what I was like really interested in, but it was kind of, it's basically, it's a riff off those old sort of 90s sci-fi films where like there's a meteorite about to hit Earth, and now in those older films and those older stories, it's like a meteorite's going to hit Earth. Okay, let's all rally together. Well, hey, USA. This time around, it's like, what if the meteorite was treated as if, or it's a comet actually, what if the comet was treated as if it was COVID, where half the population believe it's a real thing and the other half believe it's fake and it's made up and it's a conspiracy and it's not real.
Yeah.
You know, and it starts off with the scientists obviously discovering it, the astronomers discovering it, and they're obviously going to the White House and they're not believing it. Anyway.
Okay.
Now, there's hints there of a very good story to tell, and that's what really appealed to me, because I was like, oh, this is actually really cool. Unfortunately, it's just, I didn't realize it was like half of it was satire and it wasn't really like a proper message. It just didn't know whether it wanted to be serious or not. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
And that ruined it for me. But the story was interesting. It was like, subhanallah, that's actually quite terrifying, the premise there, because what if there is something like that, a huge deal coming? And it reminds me, subhanAllah, wallahi al-azim, it reminded me the most of like the Dajjal, right? In this kind of modern age of disbelief and denial, and no, he's not, and he's actually a good guy, and don't listen to them because they are in this age of misinformation and stuff. And wow. Yeah, I'm not telling anybody to watch it. I don't think anyone should watch it. I was recommended it, thinking it based on the premise it was a good idea, but I wasn't. No, it was disappointing, basically, because if you have such a strong message like that, don't end it on a. Don't like make it a joke, because actually you've got something really important to say there.
Yeah, I mean, ending it on a joke is a message in and of itself.
Yeah, I mean. Spoilers for anyone who doesn't want to, who doesn't care about it. Skip ahead 1 minute, but they all die in the end, bro. Like a meteorite hits the Earth and they all die, right? Now it actually is quite somber. The main characters that you're following, they're having dinner and you know, enjoying their last bit of time as a family, completely ignoring the fact that this is coming, which was quite nice actually, because it's like, let's just have a moment where we're just a family again and die that way. But then all the rich people have taken like some spaceship out to another planet. They get eaten by aliens, and it's like, why not sit on your message and own it? But anyway.
But bro, going back to the Wahid, yeah, because I wanted to go through this, and because I'm leaning heavily towards going for it, right? Because like I said, I was looking for something like this, and I was kind of encouraged, right? But okay, so what I worked out is that I don't think they actually invest in any companies who have any services or products related to alcohol, tobacco, gambling, blah, blah, like anything haram.
Okay.
The only thing is, right, the interest revenue, okay, so the money the company makes from interest must be below 5% of their total revenue, okay?
Right.
And then, unless it's given to charity. So basically what they're saying is there's no haram revenue other than interest, and the interest must be below 5% of their revenue. And when they make that, then we calculate it and you must give that away. Okay. So the question becomes, why, like, am I safe? Am I safe if with that 5% of interest? Because I'm just wondering, why do they not say, no, investing in the stock market completely is haram? Like, yes, no company is free from some level of interest revenue, right? And therefore it's just haram completely. Why is there this 5% thing? I know Omar mentioned this, they do qiyas. I don't know what they do qiyas with, but yeah.
It's God, I don't want to say it because I feel like I'm going to butcher this, but I read a big paper on this.
Okay.
And somebody correct me if I'm wrong. Please correct me. But it was a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, not directly linked to this, but it was linked to the principle or the idea of what is a little bit, like what is a small amount. Do you understand? So it was like, and that's where they come up with the 33.33% for like, what is it? Oh, let me remember. I don't know about the 5%, but I remember like 33%. Is it the business side?
Oh, that's for debt, I think.
Yeah.
Debt ratio. Yeah, you can't have more than a third of your like valuation owed. Yeah.
My Zoya premium is expired. That's not very helpful. But yeah, so something like that. Let's see. They have a sample report. Here we go. We have a sample report. Yeah. So okay. Yeah. So it was the business activity has to be less than 5, but the financials, so the interest-bearing debt and the interest-bearing securities, has to be below 30. So yeah, the 30 was regards to that. But you have a very valid question. I had a very valid question when I had the stock market group chat. They had the same question, and this is what I found. And it was a big paper. I think it was from Qatar that it came out, where they basically referenced it and they cross-analyzed this IOP principle thing.
Okay.
Now, I think we're ahead are following the scholars in this regard who have established this principle. There are obviously a lot of. I think what needs to be done is obviously to ask yourself how how deep do you want to go down that rabbit hole? Because clearly they've allowed it for a certain benefit that maybe supersedes the whole sort of, oh, if we don't get engaged in this, we're going to miss out kind of thing, right?
Yeah,
there are
that's what I
certain
was
things
thinking,
that, there's certain things that, it's like doctors, right? Some ulama will speak about student loans or whatever, or some sort of haram element in becoming a doctor, and allow that, because without it, how do you become a doctor? How do you get qualified? And I don't know if the stock market is that or meets that criteria.
Yeah.
But obviously they're going to have their own sort of.
I mean, it's quite easy to say that, just don't invest in it, and like, okay, just save your money up, and okay, you're going to lose money to to inflation, and you're going to pay your account every year, but so what? It's worth it. Like, you could say that,
this is it,
but
yeah. I mean,
it seems like there is this concept, and I think Omar was kind of touching on it, but not going fully into it, which is like, we want the ummah to have an outlet to kind of grow their wealth and not be weak in this regard. And if we can do that with some level of precedence from the Prophet ﷺ, then that's good kind of thing. That's
I think I wouldn't mind like getting maybe even Ustad Joe Bradford on the podcast and like asking him these questions in layman's terms. I'll try and reach out to him and see. He's on a hiatus at the moment, social media. I'm sure he will recognize my name because I always just send memes to him. I don't know why, but so I think it's valuable in that sense. What was I going to say? SubhanAllah. But yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like, even if you were to, okay, forget the stock market, put that to the side, right? Even if you were to traditionally invest in something like a business, let's say, okay, Mr. Ameen wants to invest in PureXI. Some people did offer to invest in PureXI. Obviously, I declined everybody's offers because I just couldn't trust myself with other people's money, like managing it well and bringing a profit, right? But let's say PureXI wanted to open a shop. Well, then I have to pay like insurance and all sorts of stuff for that shop and that building. And I can't, there's all sorts of things. I mean, one of the things was about the banking system and how like you have to have a bank. You might not want a bank because actually, what did we speak about? Immediately, your money's going straight into a system that, well, they put, you've paid me this amount of money and I've just gone and put it in the bank, who have immediately gone and invested it in pork and wine. Right? Am I part of the problem? I didn't even think about the banks back then, or even now, up until these past few months. And it's like, well, subhanAllah, if I have a significant amount of cash in my house, I'm going to get raided. It's like a system that's completely rigged, bro, with haram in every element.
And it's like you could say, well, just don't open a business, right? But that's like, now it's severely limiting that kind of opportunity, which
it's a hardship,
which you could say must happen at some level, right? It's like what I meant to say actually is, for example, getting insurance on something, right? Let's say it's a necessity, right? Let's say you do your own deliveries for your t-shirts, and you need to insure that car. You could say, well, you're saying it's a necessity to insure the car because you can't have a car without insuring it in the UK, right?
Yeah.
However, well, just don't open the business then, because then you won't have to do it, right? But then it comes into that question, I suppose, of how much of a necessity is something like opening a business or investing in an ETF. And on the short-term, narrow thinking, you could say it's absolutely not necessary. But maybe when you're looking at the very broad scale, you're looking at the scale of all the Muslims in the world not getting involved in these areas, you could say there is a huge loss that's happening, and therefore we must facilitate a way as halal as possible to enter into it.
And this is why, I think everybody's threshold is different, and may Allah obviously accept our intentions, because there's some people that, they'll completely when it came to stocks and shares, I had brothers that they don't even know, they're not even clued up, but because they just associate the stock market with all that sort of suited and booted, hypocrites of the world or whatever. He's like, I don't want to be anywhere near that. I don't want anything to do with that. I don't even want to know if it's permissible or not. It just seems like it's impermissible. But then when you speak to them about what business they're involved in, on the face of it, it's halal, but actually deep down you think, well, actually all these assets that you have for the company are actually all they're all borrowed or all insured, or you're paying off debts for them or whatever, and interest that's involved in there. So like, where do you draw the line? And it is difficult, bro. Like, it is very difficult. But this is the time we live in, no doubt about it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not fully decided, but we'll see, inshallah. We'll see. But it shows the reality of how murky the waters are, basically. So that was one thing, bro. By the way, I like the that was just one thing. The other one is a book that I finished reading a few weeks ago. I wanted to share it. I don't know if you have thoughts on it. Basically, the topic was something we discussed before, which is, the book is actually called Why. Let me get the actual title, because it's a bit of a big statement, It's something like, why education is, come on, dude.
Come on.
Is a waste of time. Is it just called that? Oh no, it's called The Case Against Education. Why the education system is a waste of time and money. Okay. Now this book is by an economics professor. Okay, and it's very, this book basically taught me how little I know about statistics, because he cited so many research kind of done in all different, like in social sciences, in economics, in this and that, right? And it's very thorough in that way. Okay, so I've got to give the book that. And basically the whole book, he's asking the question, is education itself, right? Not degrees, but the actual education, the things you learn, does that have positive effects on all these different areas? So on your personal well-being, on your personal wealth, on the country's development, on the country's wealth, on all these things. And he goes through studies in every area. And his conclusion basically is that no. Education itself doesn't seem to have a positive impact in those areas. Now he's looking at it from a very economics point of view, which is like, for example, if it had a positive effect, then it would grow the economy. Or if it had a positive effect, it would make people feel happier. That was one thing he looked into, make people feel happier, right? But it was very thorough, I've got to say. A lot of it went over my head. But his conclusion is that what degrees, the thing that helps is what he calls signaling. So it's like, if I can signal that I've been to uni, I've sat through those lectures, I've done the coursework, I've done the exams, it shows something. It doesn't show education. It's not necessarily that the employers even are looking for the education or the knowledge or even the skills. They are looking for a combination of, for example, he mentions three things. I can't remember them all, but one of them was, for example, how willing you are to basically fit into the system, to follow the status quo. So that's one thing that an employer would want. And that's one thing you're signaling by having a degree. The other thing is, can you do tasks? Like, what's your productivity level? And the third thing I can't remember. But the point is, the whole book, like, he goes through it so thoroughly, but in the end, the whole conclusion is signaling. It's the only benefit that you get from a degree is to signal that you have these things. It doesn't mean you are educated. It doesn't mean you are productive. It doesn't mean but it just signals that you do. And he said, basically, okay, now that we come to that conclusion, what is the problem? The problem is thousands, millions of people are going through uni to signal something, not to get something, but just to signal something. And if it wasn't as common for people to go to uni, then the value of a degree would be higher, and therefore it would no longer be signaling. The degree wouldn't just be for signaling, it would actually be for showing you have certain skills or knowledge or this or that. And so one of the proposals he had was to actually increase the cost of education or reduce the subsidies of education, to decrease basically the number of people going into uni and all of that. But it was very interesting just from when you look at something so thoroughly and with all statistics and this madness. But that was basically the conclusion.
I definitely do see this. Like my employer, let's say, has moved from a I don't know what you want to call it, a traditional sort of employee sort of base into everybody now needs degrees. So there's two routes into doing what I do. You can either have a degree already and join, and then you're kind of taught a lot of the stuff that you need to know. And it's any degree. It doesn't have to be specifically related. Or you do what's like called an apprenticeship, where you attain a degree whilst working full time and getting paid a salary. And it's like, you know, I'm in the background sort of like, why is it suddenly important to have a degree? I had a degree before I joined up, but it's like, why is it important? It's like this, it is about the signaling. It's about the I don't know what you want to call it, the professionalization of this sort of organization and what it stands for. And because people associate degrees with professionalism, and but it's interesting because like you could have any Mickey Mouse degree and get it right. As far as the education system, I mean, everybody knows that it's only to pass exams. It's not actually teaching you much. That's why none of the stuff that you've learned really stays in your head at all. I mean, I did 3 years at uni, which is the most recent thing I did, and I can't remember any of it apart from a couple of theories, you know, because it isn't practical knowledge that I'm using on my day to day. Although I would say that, like, if education is your life, like ilm, right? Ilm with Islam, you don't stop, you just continue. It's part of your entire life, and I think that's where it's beneficial if you're going to take that and carry it on. So let's say it's science, right? You carry on science. You don't just do your 3 years and you stop. What's the point? But there is arbitrary things like, you know, we mentioned it. You mentioned it briefly once before about like the arbitrary ages and the year groups and stuff. I brought it up to my mum the other day. I said that I'm convinced, like, with the current system that we've got, I was 3 years too early because
you mean starting school or?
Yeah, like I always felt like I was catching up, always. And when I stayed behind in college, did an extra year in college basically before I went to uni, that was like the most impactful year I ever had in education, probably the best I'd ever done. Because straight away I already felt like, and another year, sorry. So there's that year, funnily enough, but also when I was younger and I was in Tunisia, I'd already done year one, I think, in England, maybe year 1 and 2, I can't remember. But basically when I went to Tunisia, I had to start again. I was already older than everyone. I felt older. So I felt like there's some psychological thing in you, like, oh, I should know more. I am going to know more. I'm older than all these kids. And I did better then. I was like top of the class back then. I was top of the class when I did my 3rd year at college as well. There's something about being held back and being among people that you're generally older that was way more beneficial. But that's just me. So all these arbitrary things that we put into place, so all these exams that we put into place, everybody has to go in the same year, treating everybody the same, everybody gets assessed the same. It's all like a, you know, they've obviously tweaked things recently. Well, I say recently, but they have tweaked things like, you ever seen those foundation things that they do? So I remember like GCSE, I don't know if they still do it, but you could do GCSE normal and you could get a grade between A and E, for example.
Yes.
Or if you do the foundation, the highest you could ever get was C, but it was slightly easier.
Yeah.
People that struggled a bit.
I was on the verge of doing foundation maths, but then I didn't do it. And I got C anyway, but I was happy that I took on the challenge.
I mean, I do find it interesting, like, wherever you go, generally speaking, when it comes to GCSEs, all that anybody wants is maths and English. And depending on, you know, if it's a science-based job or career, they might want science as a GCSE as well.
But other GCSEs are just to get into the A-level stage, I guess.
Yeah, let's just say maths, English and science. I can appreciate maths being important, of course. I can appreciate English being important. Why wouldn't it be? It's the language that we speak here.
Yeah.
Science, there is benefit in some elements. I definitely see a benefit in like the vaccines and how viruses work and stuff. Like I will see things in the media about vaccines and how they work, and I'm like, yeah, I remember that. I studied that in school. While some people might not have studied that, so it's not completely foreign to me when I get these theories thrown at me. But I'm assuming, so his issue with the education system is that, what would replace it then? Would he say that, because when I'm thinking of replacing it, I'm thinking, okay, everything should be pushed more to an apprenticeship model where you pick some sort of career that you're interested in going to.
Yeah.
You know, kind of like the old blacksmith model. You go and sit next to the blacksmith and you learn how to make that sword.
Yeah.
Does that then put all that kind of, if it was funding, into the pockets of organizations that need to train their people? Because people do that anyway, right? You work anywhere, they'll teach you how to do the job. They don't just expect you to walk in, especially if it's like a foundation.
Yes. I think the argument he puts is that, okay, if they're going to train you anyway, why are all these millions of people forced to spend 3, 4, 5 years going through a degree when in the end they were going to learn that thing when they got to the job? So he's, in a very economics way, he's saying that it's an inefficient kind of process.
You know, it's interesting, the argument of like a growing economy being a benefit, because I came across a random short news documentary thing about how Japan's economy is like hasn't grown in 30 years, like inflation doesn't exist there or something along those lines, whereas like in 30 years the price of everything has stayed the same. And they were talking about that being like a negative. Oh, you know, there's not a dynamic economy and that's why like great things don't come out of there. And look at America, for example, in comparison, where all these new companies are popping out left, right and center.
Interesting.
It's like, well, okay, so things aren't allowed to be the same. You have to always be on the move upwards, otherwise you just sort of sit by the wayside. Allah knows best. But if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Like, that's how I think, right? But if you think of Japan, bro, I mean, apart from, you know, they've had a dark history and a lot of challenges, especially since World War II. But like, they kind of just keep their head down and get to work as far as like world media is concerned, you know.
Yeah, at least
like
from our part of the world.
Yeah, our perspective. Yeah, but like, I when I saw that, it's really interesting, bro. 30 years with. I think it was like 32 years or something along those lines, where the price of everything has just remained the same. Allah knows best.
That's interesting. I mean, this stuff goes over my head most of the time. But what I've been reading,
it was in response to the Turkey situation.
Because of the Turkey situation, I was exposed to some of these ideas. Like, if you have high growth economy, it's automatically going to have high inflation. Okay, so it kind of. Inflation can be an indicator of a lot of movement in the economy, good things. Like, even in America, where there's, I think, a lot of inflation these days, they're saying, oh, no, it's because the economy's like moving so much. But in Japan, if there's like very low inflation, does that mean the economy, like people are not making money, people not having jobs? Like they are, right? So I wonder.
So it's actually, okay, so I'm just.
It's actually the opposite of what I said.
No,
is that
no,
what you're going to
that.
say? Okay.
No, as in some years it's minus. So some year the inflation goes down, and I think that's what balances it. So it's not like 30 years it's stayed the same.
Up and down.
It's like if 1 year it's gone. So the highest it's ever been on this graph that goes back to 1986 was in 1992. It was up. No, in 1991 it was up about 3.25%.
What are you talking about? GDP?
Inflation.
Oh, inflation. Okay,
right? Yeah. 3 point. And then the lowest it's ever been is minus 135, and that was in 2010. I think 2009. Sorry. But yeah, generally it's been in that sort of spectrum. So for any sort of increases it has, there's going to be a couple of years down the line it will completely decrease and go back below the value that it was before.
Yeah.
And I think that's what they mean by like in 30 years or so, it's more or less stayed the same. But you know, it'd be interesting comparing that actually to a different country. Not that I want to bore the listeners with
Turkey.
Statistics. Oh man, that's going to hurt. But basically, this goes back to what we were talking about, Wahid, and the whole reason why people are exploring investment opportunities and stuff. You know, what's the point of having 5 gold bars if in 10 years I only have 2.5 gold bars? You know, it's like the mice came and nibbled at my gold. That's what's happened.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It really is.
Yeah, I think what the guy, the good thing about this book is that he does have suggestions, right? He's not just attacking and not kind of, I don't remember a lot of the suggestions, but one was to lean a bit more towards the, what do they call it? Vocational training, which is like on the job kind of stuff. Not just on the job, but very skills based, very practical, very hands on, right?
I think there are way too many degrees. I'll agree with that in terms of, I don't think there needs to be that many. I can imagine, I mean, it's hard to, I have a friend who's a doctor who like really wants to come onto Mind Heist, and I'd really like him to come on. It'd be interesting to speak to him about, you know, all of that stuff. But like, there's always an assumption like doctors need to have a degree. Like, oh yeah, university needs to exist because of doctors, right? For sure. That's an assumption. I can imagine there's a lot of things to learn, but it'd be interesting to see how much of that is actually things you're learning versus passing tests versus, you know, actually the learning is really done when you're out there as a student doctor or whatever you want to call it, and shadowing whatever and learning on the job kind of thing. Because I see that all the time. You know, every time you go to the hospital, at least my local hospital is like a university hospital, so you'll get loads of sort of junior doctors or whatever coming up and whatever, like learning on the job, and like, oh, do you mind if my observers can come and watch? And it's like, yeah, just don't chop my leg off. Please don't make any mistakes. Yeah. So yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? And it's kind of reminds me of like, I'd like to explore how systems worked in the past, because the exam merit system, whatever you want to call it, the assessment structure that we have this day and age, is like just taken as fact, as gospel. This is the way it is, and this is the way it's always been. When actually, you do speak about sitting at the feet of the scholars when it came to ilm, right? And there's something about that. You wouldn't just learn.
I think there were
syllabus.
Probably, I can always be wrong about these historical facts, but probably there were less types of jobs, if you like, in the past.
Probably,
right?
Yeah.
Because one thing you learn in whether it's economics or business studies, even in school, is that as economies develop, you get more specialization, right?
Oh yeah.
So before you have general farmer, right? But today you have the guy that operates the tractor, the guy that knows about the fertilizer mix and this and that, the guy who blah, 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 right? That's an example. Or like McDonald's, always the example they give, where one of the breakthrough things that McDonald's did was that, or even Ford, Henry Ford, was they, instead of making one guy make a car from beginning to end, and having to know every element of that process, they're like, no. The most efficient way is just turn that screw 500 times a day, the same screw. Yeah. So that's specialization, right? So now instead of having one guy that makes a car from beginning to end, he needs to do, you could say, 6 different jobs. Okay. Now we're stopping that and we're saying that, no, you're going to do one job. And so let's say there are 6 kind of jobs in building a car. We're specializing it into 6 people having 6 specific jobs, specific roles. So that's specialization in jobs. And so we have a lot more specialization, which means a lot more types of jobs, which means a lot more, whatever you want to call it, degrees or things that need to be learnt specifically, right? Also, I'm guessing we're living in a much more technical world. Yeah, of course we're living in a more technical world because we just know more about the world and how it works, and therefore we can play with more different levers, right? We can, in the soil, we can play with the pH and then the phosphorus levels and this and that. So many, and then that I just mentioning in soil, but you could talk about weather and rocket stuff and cars and all of that, yeah? So there are more jobs, there's more knowledge needed just to do jobs in it. So it kind of makes sense. And so if in the past there was like, okay, a village needs 5 people, one guy to teach farming, one guy blacksmith, one guy, now it's like 500 people needed in the village. Yeah.
And there's also like the practical element of how do you whittle down applicants, apart from doing the tests, doing those sort of rigorous tests where you can say, okay, you've all studied equally the same. Because you know what, we had, I'm sort of in the recruitment world a bit now, and like, there was a role we were advertising for and about 500 people applied. It's just like, how the hell are we going to whittle down all these people?
Yeah.
And they started getting really rigorous with some of the online tests that we had, and they set some arbitrary scores that were a lot higher. So it's just like, yeah, if you didn't have all those blocks, all those hurdles you had to jump, you just have everyone applying for all the best jobs
and it makes it even harder when it's like globalized world. Imagine the job is remote and you open it up to non-UK citizens.
Absolutely.
Then the 500 applications go to 50,000 applications.
Absolutely. Like the ease of access there is so great because think of the barrier of like just paying for uni, for example.
Yes.
Not everyone can do that. Not everyone can go to the best uni. Like, let's say me and you went to uni, study the same course, but just because you went to Oxford and I went to Brighton, you're going to get picked over me. And it's like the prestige of it all.
Yeah. So we do need filters to make it easier to pick people, but should the filter be uni? That's the question.
Yeah.
That's the question, I think. It's on Wikipedia, actually, there's a good kind of summary of what the guy is saying, okay? So he's basically saying that drawing on the economic concept of job market signaling and research in educational psychology, the book argues that much of higher education is very inefficient and has only a small effect on improving human capital, contrary to the conventional consensus in labor economics. So this book is a bit of a contrary kind of contrarian view. It says that the author Kaplan, he argues that the primary function of education is not to enhance students' skills, but to certify their, number one, intelligence, number two, their conscientiousness, which is basically attention to detail and these kind of things, and number three, conformity. And these are attributes that are valued by employers. He ultimately estimates that approximately 80% of individuals' return to education is the result of signaling, with the remainder due to human capital accumulation. So like 80% is signaling. The benefit you get out of uni, 80% is just signaling, showing that you have certain things, whether you have them or not. And then 20% is you've actually gained some level of skill, education, knowledge, blah, blah, blah.
It'd be interesting to see the breakdown of what oh god, I might unplug myself. It's interesting to see the breakdown of like what kind of subjects he looked at, because I'm sure that there's going to be fluctuations in terms of what
yeah he did that, bro. The book seems very thorough. He did that. He looked at obviously what they call it, liberal arts, and then he looked at like the more technical subjects, and he's like go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, art is an example. Like my sister, mashallah, like she's an incredible artist, bro. Like, honestly, really, really good. But I remember, like, there was this time when she was talking about, maybe it was at A-level or GCSE or something. She briefly mentioned it, where, like, she brought something in, you know, a piece of work, and, like, the teacher was like, oh, no, that's not right. It's like, what do you mean it's not right? It's art. Like, it can be whatever you want it to be. You know, it's so subjective. So it's interesting, like, how subjective it is based on a curriculum. You know, you have to match this curriculum.
But this always happens when you're trying to do something at scale. Okay, so whether it is employ people at scale, educate people at scale, you get these what you would call, like, could you call it? It's not inefficiencies, because it is actually efficient, but you could say it's ineffective. Okay, so it does a job efficiently, like quickly, but it doesn't do the right job. Yeah. That's basically what happens. So it's like, okay, we need to get through 500 applications. Let's just, let's just do a filter. Let's say we have an Excel spreadsheet. Yeah. It's like sort by highest, whatever grade. Yeah. And it's like, okay, the top guy. Okay, let's go with this guy. You know? So that's efficient, right? It's quick to sort that way. But are you ultimately getting the best candidate? Not necessarily. Or you could say definitely not.
I just don't know what the alternative would be, because then you'd have an influx of so many people that how then do you pick out those people? People are already getting way too many applicants, and that's why there's so many hoops to jump through. Like, you apply for any job and there's like 100 different online exams and all this sort of stuff. Even for something as simple, bro, I remember like when I was 18 and I needed a quick sort of part-time job, I went to work in Asda. But I remember the actual application process had like an online test. I was going to stack shelves, bro, and they wanted to test me online, some sort of personality test or whatever. Yeah. And clearly that was there to just, you know, and that's the most exhausting thing about applying for work is all the different, it's not just like, oh, give a CV. Hardly anyone wants just a CV anymore.
Yes. I mean, CV is easy. The tough thing I remember was always the cover letter, like doing a custom cover letter for each job.
Yeah.
Because then it makes applying for one job it can easily take hours, right?
Yeah.
If you really want the job, you're gonna spend 1, 2, 3 hours on like applying.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, like, experience trumps everyone, bro, because you know, jobs aren't just open to the person, the outside they're applying. There's also internal applicants that are already in the organization, and you're always going to pick those over anyone else.
I think what I would like to do is, I don't know how to do it exactly, but it's like, see how much people are willing to try to get the job. What are they willing to do? Like, what can they come up with creatively to apply for the job? Like, one guy that I'm coaching right now, actually, I wasn't like officially offering coaching, but he reached out to me on so many different channels, that he got my attention. He got my attention, and then I spoke to him, and he's like, yeah, I want to do this. And then, like, now it's been a year that we've been like working together. So that kind of stuff I think is valuable. But then you could say, well, actually, if you do that level of activity to get a job, you won't need to apply for as many jobs, actually. Because I was thinking, how many jobs can you apply for if you're doing that level of reaching out to people in these creative ways? But the truth is, if you apply for like 5-10 jobs like that, I think you'll get one of them. Versus if you're churning out cover letters, you might have to apply to 100 jobs to get a job.
I think that I think every job I've ever applied for, more or less, has always been like not a passion thing. I just to get some sort of income. So it's difficult
that is true.
Passion
Yeah.
wine.
But this is the thing, as an employer, I want passion. I want interest.
Yeah. How do you get passionate over like Quaker's Oats or flipping Kellogg's or whatever? You know
accounting.
What I mean? Like,
how can you get passionate over accounting?
You know that there's going to be people out there that definitely are passionate. It's hard. Like I've interviewed people now. You know, I've been interview trained. I'm part of like interview panels. It is interesting, like interviewing people, because I've never really been on that side of it. Especially interviewing on on behalf of an entire organization.
Yes.
And I immediately noticed I was super harsh, bro, because I interview on a panel, right? And after the interview was done, they turn to me and they say, "Okay, what do you think?" Blah blah blah. And I look at my feedback sheet and I'm like, "Oh, didn't do that right. Because what I also do on the side is I coach people for interviews. So like an interview structure. And I teach people the best sort of way to give interviews. Now, clearly, the people that I'm interviewing aren't people that I've given workshops to. So I've already set this high standard in my workshops that when I actually go to interview someone, I'm expecting a high standard based on a model that I'm obviously offering up, which we use like the STAR model. I don't know if you've ever come across that, but it's like it's basically a competency-based interview model that we use, where like I'll ask you, name me a time where you've helped somebody in need. Or name me a time where you've gone above and beyond to, help someone in need and whatever, at your own expense. And they'll have to give me a situation in their life or their workplace where they've done that. And the way I'd like the answer structured is like, you give me the situation, so the S, then you give me the task at hand that you had to achieve. And then that's the T, and then the A is action, so what you actually did. Go into depth about what you did, and then the reflection, which is review and reflection. This is what I thought. This is what the feedback was. This is what I would have done if instead, or if it was to happen again, or whatever.
Yeah,
and that's a really easy way to follow that, and you can tell when people have used that. Otherwise, people are just going all over the place with the situation and back and forth and reflecting. And so it's really difficult to follow that as an interviewer. And then also you want to I'm very conscious of like keywords and word usage, and do I want somebody in my team that just made that reference to somebody of a specific group or a specific, I had somebody mention, I don't know if you're familiar of like the Gypsy Roma community in the UK. And someone mentioned something, obviously in their answer, but obviously referring to them in a negative context. And I was like, whoa, hold your horses there. You know what I mean? Like stuff like that. And there's so much control. So there's way more than just education to think about. It's also somebody's actual personality, behavior, conditioning, all of that sort of stuff. So there is a lot of hurdles to jump through.
There is the school of thought that you should hire for culture and values over like skills and competency.
There are definitely people, bro, like there's people now that like they're so eager to join the organization, but they haven't got the qualifications. And I'm working with them to try and get the qualifications that are just enough. But it's like, you are so way more eager than I am, like super eager than I would have done half the stuff you've done to get into an organization. Like, but I found myself here because I just happened to go to uni and happened to do this and happened to apply and happened to eventually get a job. Whilst these people are hungry to join, it's like, wow, you deserve to be in my place. And I feel bad about that, but here I am, interviewing you. So it's difficult, man. And actually it does speak about productivity, and it does speak about getting the right people, because, as an organization, you're going to want people that are like, they just want to go to work, bro. Like, this is their life, right? They identify as this organization, or identify as like, this is my job in life. This is my mission in life. This is my purpose or whatever. I don't feel that, and I feel guilty that I don't feel that. But, I got mouths to feed, bro. Do you feel, a personal question maybe for you, but like, the career that you're in now, the job that you're in now, do you feel that sense of like belonging? Like, this is what I'm meant to be. Is that even something that is possible to feel? Because you see it, especially with non-Muslims at least, like, oh, I was born to be blacksmith. I was born to be a fisherman. I was born to code, like stuff like that. Like that's their purpose.
Yeah. Do I feel that?
Get in trouble with these colleagues now.
No, honestly, yeah. To give you the full answer, I have struggled with this, because the way that we initially started the business was, this type of business will make us money. Let's do this type of business. It wasn't coming from a place of passion. Yeah. I think over time, because alhamdulillah, we've been doing this for like 5 years now, in different forms. Obviously, we learn over time and we shift things. And I would say today it's in a better place, the best place ever, in terms of feeling like it's my calling, right?
Alhamdulillah.
And that's because like I can stand behind the kind of the help we give people, and that it's actually helping them to do something positive, right? Something ultimately, bro, is like, that's really good. Like I mentioned on the Hijrah episode I did, where I was like what we help people do in starting businesses will actually help you do something like do Hijrah and be able to live in a Muslim country and live and work remotely, kind of thing. Like it will actually allow you to do that. Like that's really powerful. That's really cool. So I'm feeling more like that these days. And every time I get positive results, like I think just yesterday a guy posted saying, I made my first sale. Like, and I know when you make your first sale, you're going to start making more sales soon after, because you break through the mental barrier, right? So that stuff is what really drives me. Like when I hear that, it like validates like all the work I've put into it and really trying to help people in detail. And yeah, so I enjoy the coaching element of what I do in terms of helping people with business and stuff. I enjoy that. Yeah, I enjoy that part, definitely. Sometimes selling, because we do a lot of selling. It's not as satisfying, I guess, as the coaching people. But that's why I'm looking towards starting something new, which it does have coaching in it, you know, which it's very much like helping people get married, helping people, whatever, manage their finances. I'm actually kind of passionate about financial management and stuff. So these kind of things, I feel it. It does get tiring, you know, something like coaching. It's not like, oh, passive income, because you're doing like these like one-on-one sessions or whatever.
Of course,
but you know, what else are you going to do? You're going to chill on your private jet?
Yeah. How do you get that satisfaction of, you know, I coach a lot of people now, had like about 50 people, I think, recently.
Yeah.
All sort of, you know, I think my issue is like, I like and I enjoy coaching people. It's what I'm coaching them to isn't something I always agree with. You know, and it's like, because you're doing it for a third party, it's difficult to obviously manage you know, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
If I was coaching to something that I objectively thought was great and
the best thing for them,
it's like, you know, if I was coaching someone to Islam or coaching somebody to the deen or whatever, I'd be like, yeah, this is awesome.
Yeah.
Like I remember a couple of days ago, my dad asked me something about Salat. You know, he was conscious. He thought he might be making some mistakes. I remember sitting and I was like, oh, you know, I'll show you how to pray. And it's like, wow, the enthusiasm in me right now is insane. Right? But if I could have that for anything else. But yeah, my question, like you've answered it there, but like my wider question to the world or to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala really is like, is that a thing? Like, is that something? Because you grow up and everybody's like, what are you going to be when you're older? And I never had an answer. I never could figure that out. And I always had big issues with me and my dad because I didn't have an answer to that, which made him encourage me to do certain things I never really wanted to do because I still didn't know what I wanted to do. And up until now, I can't really think of like a passion thing, like, oh, I'd really love to do this. You know, I love doing mind heists, but I don't consider it a job per se. However, you never know. Like if it was to become, let's say hypothetically, you know, imagine it was the Joe Rogan podcast, right? Would that spoil it? Would all the income from there spoil it? Because suddenly, you know, you've got all these outside pressures and there you kind of...
You got to do those ad reads, bro.
And it's like you can't say the wrong thing anymore. You can't risk it. It's like it's like what happened to YouTube. YouTube was a place of expression, and then suddenly when all these corporations got involved and they got bought by Google and all this stuff, people getting demonetized, people get like, you got to watch what you say and there's no freedom anymore.
Yeah.
And
even just the pressure that you have to get a video out every week or a podcast out every week, that could ruin it. You start doing videos that you're not actually interested in just for the sake of views or whatever. Yeah.
I had this thought of I was watching a couple of YouTube videos actually, and I was like, oh, do you know what? I always wanted to make videos like this. And then I thought straight away, I was like, no, I don't want to, because I came across a YouTuber who, bro, let's you know what? I'm going to tell you what he does. He's a puppet, bro. Like, he never sees face. He's a puppet. He just talks about video games, right? That's what he does. And I was like, that's like, he's talking about something that he enjoys and whatever, and he does it through a puppet, so you can't even see his face, whatever. I know it sounds really obscure, but that was it. That's the important reason why I say it's really obscure, because he just put out a video talking about his mental health issues, how he was burning himself out, making these videos all the time. So, and immediately I was like, that's exactly why I don't want to do this stuff, because it would just suck out all the passion. Graphic design is a good example. It's great making your own stuff. It's great, just experimenting and whatever, all that effort and energy. And you know how long it's taken you to get to that point where it's like, this is what I've made. But you go and try and do some graphic design for somebody, and you're going to have an awful time. You're never going to want to do it again. And that's why, I took a back seat from doing requests and commissions and stuff. Occasionally someone will message me with a very, do whatever you want, I just love your work kind of thing. And that's great. That's a really cool opportunity. But a lot of the time, you'll get some people that want really specific things, or you could spend hours and hours designing something, and you know how long it's taken you to get to a certain point, and they'll just want repeats and reruns and do it again. And I don't like this bit, and I don't like that bit. So yeah, doing things as a job that you're actually passionate about can sometimes suck out all the fun. But maybe there are things in life. Maybe this is what I'm trying to get at: is like, are there things that objectively, no matter how many bad elements there are to it, like how many hiccups and barriers there are, because there's always going to be hiccups and barriers in the dunya, right? Are there things that were objectively like, this is what we're meant to be, like this is where I'm meant to be? Because ever since Islam became my purpose, like I started practicing, and I was fully aware that we're put on earth to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that replaced any sort of dunyawi purpose that the kuf kaf system taught me, because apart from the dunya, apart from worshipping Allah, what do they say to you? Like, what's your purpose in life? Like, what are you gonna, like, watch any of this motivational stuff, like go out there and be that thing. Like, bro, who is it? David Goggins? Is it David Goggins?
Yeah,
There's a book that I've got, and I've never read it, and my wife was like, you should read this book. I came across a clip of his, and he said something like, oh, bro, I'm going to say it, even though I don't obviously agree with it, but he said something like, if you believe in God or whatever you believe in, imagine you die one day and you meet your creator and you have a chat with him, and he says, oh, it sounds ridiculous, but he says to you, look at all this, like he shows you what you could or should have been on the world. And he's not talking about, oh, you should have been a good person or whatever. He's like, oh, you should have been this, should have been the best version. You could have been this like 5-star athlete, and you could have been this multimillionaire, but you didn't, and you suck basically because you didn't do that. Do you want to be that person? And it's like, is that it? Like your purpose? Like the purpose framework is dunyawi. It's like, oh, that's what they teach you, bro.
Yeah, it's very like materialism kind of thing. Like not materialism. Destiny. What's the word, bro?
What? Shallow?
Yeah, I guess hedonistic, I guess.
That's it. The whole purpose element is on the dunya. Like, you could have been the guy that cured cancer. I mean, that's pretty impressive. But you could have been the guy that like made the next iPhone, or you could have been the guy that sent us to Mars, or whatever it is that Elon Musk is doing, right? It's like you could have been that guy in the dunya. It's like, well, that all falls by the wayside to me when I know that my purpose is to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ultimately. All right. That's my
but there are many dunyawi ways that you can manifest that worship. For example, the first few khulafa, they spread Islam so far. Yeah. So that is, you could say, restricted to the dunya, right? Okay, the Muslim empire, whatever you want to call it, civilization, it reached physically on the earth. It had, it's the domain spread so far. You're like, no, that's dunya, bro. But come on, they brought the light of Islam to whatever percentage of the world, right? Same as I was thinking, like Umer Suleman on the last episode. Imagine you're that guy, like he seems quite equipped with the tech background and the Islamic finance background. He seems quite equipped to do something like, who knows, like imagine just if he could bring proper financial and Islamic education and literacy to just the English-speaking Muslims and make that a very mainstream thing where they're all like investing properly, they all know how to pay their zakah, they all know how to save money, how to budget as well, right? That would be millions of people, yeah? That would be a huge thing, right? In terms of legacy, like putting ajr and these things aside, yeah? Just to say, I did that, yeah? That's a big deal. And in the akhirah, we can't say there wouldn't be huge reward in that as well. So these kind of accomplishments are something, no?
Well, what I'm trying to focus on is like the things that make you, the purposeful things that give you an income, right? Because we all work at the moment, but it's like, I was talking, so I started this sort of thought experiment off by comparing myself to the person I'm coaching. This person I'm coaching is so passionate about this job that he wants to get into, my job, for example, but I have not got that passion. I never did. I just happened to be here, right? And it's about, is there people out there that both have that passion and also, they're getting paid for it? And I'm sure there is. I know
Definitely,
there is. Of course there is. But it's like trying to basically manifest that in a way of
how can you get closer to that? You mean?
Yeah, how could I get closer to that in a life that I've never really had that? And I'm not saying that I'm the only person with this issue, but I know there's so many people
but I would
live
say,
lives and they don't go anywhere purposeful with it. Like, I'm not dissing anybody that works as waiters or waitresses or whatever, but there's so many people that I know. Like, I went into, my TV broke. I had to go buy another TV. SubhanAllah.
Was it your son again broke another TV?
I didn't see who it was. I didn't want to point fingers. I asked, but he didn't really give me a good enough answer. So I'm withholding my judgments. But I went into, was it Curry's PC World, whatever it's called, electronics store, and I saw somebody in there from college, back in college. And I was like, I've been through so many jobs and so many life changes, and you're still here. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I know what he was like at college, and I know this probably isn't what he wanted in his life, right? And this is where it kind of got me thinking. It's like, is he just happy here? Is this what he wanted? Did he want anything bigger for himself? If you're happy, great. I've always had thought experiments in my head of like, what would really make me happy as a job? And I know it sounds ridiculous, but like the idea of like a postman is just so cool to me. Like someone delivering gifts all the time. So awesome. Like I'm always happy to get a parcel, bro. Always. And that's because like the career I'm in now is like, if I'm meeting people, apart from the kind of role I'm doing at the moment, but traditionally, if I'm meeting people, it was always bad news. So to go from that to like every time you get a parcel, like people are happy to see you, like, oh, sweet. But then you could also be delivering like bad news. Oh, it's a bill. Great, thanks. Didn't want this,
well, bro, you could take up Amazon delivery on the weekends.
Well, they do say that. But
get a taste of it, bro.
Oh, bro, but that's the thing, bro. Like the pressure of that and like the deadlines and like, oh, hurry up and blah, blah, blah. It sucks all that joy out of it.
But not many things are like that. Like I say this to people all the time, like whenever we're talking about business, it's like, look, you start business partially because you want to be in control of what you do. Yes. And if in theory, if you're in more control of what you do, you're not going to do what you dislike. Yes. But that's not true in business fully. You're going to do, it will fluctuate between maybe 60% is the lowest you'll go in terms of 60% of my work I like.
Yeah.
But that's still 40% you don't like, right? Like, where am I now? I might be at 80%. Like, I enjoy, or I'm cool with 80% of what I do. There's still a 20% that I don't like. And that's just part of the thing. Like, many people, they start business and then they have to do accounting. And it's like,
yeah,
I didn't sign up for this, but you did when you started business, right?
Yeah.
And so there's always that element. Like Umer Suleman, he said, I love this job. I love being involved in this area. This is my thing, Islamic finance, blah, blah, blah. But you think he enjoys who knows what, right? For example, long meetings, or maybe he hates that. And so there's always that element, right? So the same with the postman, maybe it's enjoyable. Okay, when the winter comes, oh no, it's dead. But summer, I love it. So there's always these things. But I think, bro, in your situation, for example, or someone similar to you, you're too young really to expect to be there. Perhaps you would just start to get a feeling of the direction to go in to enjoy your job now, right? Mm-hmm. Like Umer Suleman, he said, this is my dream job. But how old is he? I don't know, but he's older than us for sure, right?
Yeah. There is definitely something to be said about the recipient of all the khair, right? And it's like, tasting that sort of business ownership thing when I had Pure XI, and like, you put a lot of hard work in, and the moment you get that success, you feed it because you're the recipient of that success, because you know how much hard work you put in. Similarly, like with what Omar was talking about, Wahid, I would say, and the other extracurricular work he does, so to speak, it benefits the ummah, right? So anything where you feel like you've benefited the ummah, you're like, yes, like this is reward, inshallah, right? But when you're working for an organization or a company, whatever, that you don't care about, and you're just putting money in their pockets, and actually you're not really even getting bonuses or anything out of that, that's where it's like, this sucks.
No
matter how hard I work, I get paid the same. No matter how hard I work, I'm not getting, like, I don't care if so and so has patted me on the back. Like, it doesn't make a difference to my day. So that's it, really. And they talk about this career ladder. Like, bro, people come up with the greatest ideas in my organization only because they want a promotion. That's all it is. So like, half the people you speak to about like you've got like these really good ideas of how to change things for the better, and I'm thinking like extension wise, I'm thinking like ummah wise, I'm thinking like the dunya wise, right? But like they're only on board if they can see their own promotion in that kind of line of thinking, right? Otherwise, what's the point? And like, ideas will come, then they'll go because the person got promoted, no one's going to run that idea anymore, whatever it is. So these are the things, bro. But when you're working for the ummah, you got way more inspiration, inshallah. When you're working obviously for yourself, as bad as it might get, those small wins like are times 100, because they're wins for yourself. They're not wins for Jeff Bezos or for whoever heads this company, right?
For sure,
so unless you're an organization that really rewards its employees, but it's difficult, man. And I think I'm sure everyone who works with non-Muslims, but predominantly, will obviously feel it. It's like, you feel like an outsider when you're trying to just be a Muslim anywhere that isn't surrounded with Muslims, right? Yeah. So I think, I have narrowed my sort of thinking down to like, I want to work in an organization where it's Muslim, where I feel like, at least we're shielded from this kind of outside like influence. And when I say Muslim, I mean consciously Muslim. I mean, like, I'm not, basically you've got that same shared vision, and I think the shared vision is really important. Omar spoke about shared visions about Wahid, and I was really reassured by Wahid's mission statement and the mission in terms of what he was representing. I was like, that's brilliant. Like, if I can always be reminded every day that's what we're about, that's motivational. I'd do that. I'm really bad with numbers, otherwise I would have applied with Wahid, right? But other organizations, it's like, hey, I don't agree with everything you're trying to do here. I'm part of the organization, but I'm not 100% a big fan. And actually, you know what? Omar did speak about that, about the banking system, about working in finance before, and how actually he was uncomfortable. And he spoke about the discomfort, and he spoke about how it's that discomfort that then drives us to seek other opportunities elsewhere, Yeah. I did apply once for a Muslim charity. I did get an interview. Unfortunately, I didn't go for it. I didn't even turn up for the interview, subhanAllah, because I got cold feet. And obviously there are things about charities that people do discuss about, should you get paid and all this other stuff and whatever. But that was really like me trying to discover a really valuable purpose. Like, I want to do something that means something, not just to the ummah, but to me as well. Like, I get up every day feeling like, I need to do this because, it doesn't matter if I'm a bit under the weather or whatever, like, this is important. Both for providing for my family, but also helping out and giving a purpose-driven sort of career, right? But I think, everyone should reflect on that and reflect on what they're doing. If you're just selling iPhones in the Apple store, do you feel like really fulfilled by that? Is that fulfilling? And I think that's ultimately my question. My question is, like, in this dunya, is that something attainable? Is that something that exists? Something that you can wake up every day and go for? Or is the dunya really a place to struggle and a place to just continue struggling in that sense? And I think that's like my kind of thought process with it all. It's reassuring to see people that are obviously Muslim brothers and sisters, and like you said about 80% of your, you're at that 80% approval rating in your own career, and that's really cool to see, and I love that, and I love to hear that, because when you're on this side of the fence, it's like, bro, it's like 80% peak for me. 20% maybe, 80% like, does this thing even exist?
But that's what you can do. You can look at that 20% and say, okay, what does a job doing that all day look like? But that's why you're saying, like, the reflection, that's where the reflection comes in. And I think the type of place where you get, because ultimately, bro, like, fulfillment for a Muslim, a lot of the time fulfillment comes from feeling positive impact from what they do. Yes. So where do you get the most impact? It's in your own business, or it's in a business where you fully share the vision, or it's in a small business where you have like a large say in what happens. So these are maybe 3 areas that people can look if they're looking for that kind of fulfillment, I think, and take note of what you feel, what you enjoy, what you hate, and say, okay, for example, I loved coaching these people for the interviews, but I don't care so much about like other recruiting stuff. Okay, so how can I get more into coaching? How can I lean more into that? Blah blah blah. You know, that's maybe a process to follow.
I feel like this episode has been quite a it's almost been a word for word response to what the last episode was. I think it's really important listeners listen to that, because I think what we've just spoken about for the past 20 minutes or whatever has been that kind of work for something greater than yourself, work like give yourself a bigger purpose. And I think there's going to be a lot of listeners that are, you know, especially the younger ones that are like working a part-time job and they're still in that part-time job, because it's very easy to just like you go to uni or college or whatever and you've got that part-time job, you finish uni, you're still in that part-time job. I remember I was definitely in that situation. And actually, you know what, subhanallah, I will admit I had a lot of outside pressures, maybe from my father and stuff, which made me rush into trying to prove something to him and not exploring my options. But actually, in retrospect, that was a perfect opportunity to think deeply about what I wanted to do, because I was still at home. I just finished uni, you know, I'm getting an income. I should have paused at that point and thought, hey, I should think about doing, you know, think about what my interests are, think about what my passions are, where my passions lie. But no, I did fall victim a bit to, you know, what people would think, what people would say. And I think it is difficult for a lot of people from, you know, ethnic minority Muslim backgrounds of, you know, second generation, got to please the family, got to go down that route. So I think, yeah, hit pause and think deeply about what would give you a bit of purpose and what would get you out of bed every morning. And I think that's the most important thing, because I certainly struggle. But I'm sure everybody does. You know, at some level. But actually having that reminder, you know, I envy people in a good way, in a halal way. I envy people that are out there doing good work, you know, and I'd love to be part of that, subhanAllah. So may Allah obviously guide us to what's best, bro. What can I say?
Ameen, ya Rab. Ameen. This has been solid, bro. This has been solid. Although, let me think. There's 1, 2, 3 topics actually that I had in mind that we didn't cover, but that's good. That's for next time, inshallah. We'll end it there then, inshallah. Go to mindhousepodcast.com to contact us with your questions, suggestions, comments, inshallah. And keep any guest suggestions coming in as well. Hook us up with Joe Bradford, with whoever you want.
If you're listening to this podcast and you feel like you might be a really good guest, just pitch us what you're about.
Yes.
Let me know. You know, I wanna make people famous. I don't want to get famous people on all the time. That's kind of, you know. But at the same time,
it's too cliche. Yeah, we can mix it up for sure, definitely. Cool. Subhanak Allahumma wa bihamdik, shadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum, kiddos.
Alaikum salam.